Okay, well, we will go ahead and get started. So first of all, Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us. So this year, instead of, or potentially in addition to, reducing our junk food intake, reducing the amount of money we spend, or reducing our time being sedentary, typical New Year's resolutions, we are all here basically vowing to try to reduce our waste. And we will do this together through our home waste audit. So we're really happy to have you join us. This is basically designed as a way to increase your waste literacy, as well as help you reduce your waste. So we'll get started. So welcome to our home waste audit. We see this as a collaborative science project hosted by us, the U of T trash team, and it's really fueled by our community, which is all of you. So today we're going to take you through webinar 1, which is a short presentation that covers who we are, the U of T trash team, some background on waste with a focus on plastic waste, and some instructions for our home waste audit. So before we really dive in, let's get to know each other, and then we're going to acknowledge the land upon which we do our local work here in Toronto. So today you have two hosts, myself, so I'll introduce myself and then I'll pass it over to Rafaela. So my name is Chelsea Rockman. I'm one of the co-founders of the U of T trash team, and I'm also a researcher of microplastics at the University of Toronto. I've been working on this issue for quite some time, so I feel quite passionate about this topic. So I'm really happy to see everyone in the room. And every year when we think about this, we also share our New Year's resolutions beyond waste. For me this year, I've decided for it to be about waste. I've been spending a good chunk of my year traveling, and I'll spend over a month in Mexico City. And so my goal is when I'm there, not just to improve my Spanish, but also to learn about their local waste management. I'm going to pass it over to Rafaela to introduce herself.
Thanks, Chelsea. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming here today. We really appreciate you here. I'm Rafaela, and I'm also co-founder of the trash team. And I've been studying the social impacts of waste since 2006, when I first had my first field work in a landfill, where I was talking and with waste pickers in Brazil. So my New Year's resolution is about learning French. Now that I'm a Canadian, I feel like it's my duty to learn a little bit about French, at least to communicate it with other provinces. So that's what I want to do this year.
Awesome. Thanks, Rafaela. And so then we also wanted to take a bit of time to get to know each of you a little bit, who are fellow community scientists in this endeavor. And so a lot of you typed where you're from in the chat. And if you haven't, please feel free to add where you are from. And this helps us understand the diversity of our data. Waste management is incredibly local. And so I can see already that some of you are from the city of Toronto. Some of you are from Scarborough. We have someone from Markham. And we have somebody joining from Kingston and Etobicoke, which I think is technically the region of Peel, but I could be wrong. Each of these places likely have different waste management strategies. Don't go digging into them yet if you don't already know it, because that's going to be a homework assignment for next week. But welcome and thanks everybody for joining. So now we're going to go ahead and acknowledge the lands on which we work in Toronto, recognizing that some of you are likely in different places around the province, or even in some cases, some years around the world. So we think it's important to recognize the history of the lands on which we call home. So for our team, we will speak to the land on which the University of Toronto operates, which for thousands of years has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River. So today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are really grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. And next, we'll go ahead and give you a little bit of an introduction to who we are. So we are the U of T trash team. We were formed in 2017 in collaboration with the Rockman Lab, which is my research lab at the University of Toronto. We are a science-based community outreach organization with a common goal to increase waste literacy as a way to reduce plastic pollution. So this audit fits right in. The work we do is really fueled by a dynamic team of volunteers, students, early career researchers working together towards our shared goal. And really being an arm of a research lab and the university, we truly do try very hard to have a foundation in science, helping provide and communicate the facts that can ultimately inform solutions. Our three main work streams are community outreach, education, and solutions-based research. And we also have very recently created a theory of change, which is a bit of artwork that actually one of our volunteers, very talented volunteers, drew for us. And so here you can see how scientific evidence provides the foundation for our work. It really fuels these three rivers that you see here, which are our three work streams, which go into, in this case, Lake Ontario, fueling locally where we work, but surrounded by different places around the world, showing that we do work locally, but we do it trying to think globally towards this global issue. And so this year we have also added art to our portfolio. And so it is through art that we basically tell our story in this picture. And if you have any questions about the U of T trash stream, please don't hesitate to ask during the Q&A period. And you can also always visit our website to learn more. But really, let's dive right into the reason you are all logged in this evening, which is our Home Waste Audit, our New Year's edition. So this project, as I said earlier, is really designed to help us each increase our waste literacy and really change our own personal habits to protect our planet. So thinking really locally about this global issue. This project has two personal objectives. One is to learn about the waste streams in your municipality. So that means learning what bins you have, is it recycling, landfill, organics, and what goes in them. And two, to decrease your waste footprint and really divert waste away from your landfill by procuring, so purchasing, and using products that you can reuse or recycle. The data that you collect will help track your progress. Our collective shared data will enable us to see how diverse waste streams are across geographies and how waste literacy and changed behaviors can reduce waste. We want to assure you that the data you see when compiled will be anonymized, synthesized, and shared in our second webinar. So it won't be saying who did what, it'll be saying how did we do as a collective group together. And if you have any questions about that at any time, please feel free to email us. We will have a Q&A period, so that'll be at the end of the webinar. So if you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat, and Susan will keep track of them so that we can bring them up at the Q&A, unless we can answer them in the chat during, and in that case, we might try. And so in just a bit, I'm going to start to go through the instructions of the audit, which is focused on local solutions to a quickly growing issue. But first, before we go into instructions, before we go into Q&A, we actually want to kind of give us some context. And so I'm going to turn it over to Rafaela, who's going to put our project in context of the global issue of plastic pollution. So Rafaela, over to you.
All right, thanks. Before we begin, I want you to pause a little bit and take a look around you in your room that you're sitting in your office, your living room. I don't know where you are right now, but think about and look around how many items in that room are made of plastic. Is there plastic in the laptop that you are, or the phone that you are watching this webinar? Are you like taking notes in the pen? Are you sitting on a plastic chair or a sofa made from synthetic fabric? If you look around, I suspected that most of you have noted several plastic items in the room that you are sitting in. I can see in my office a lot of them because plastic is everywhere and it's part of our daily lives and it's something that we use all the time. And there are some obvious and great reasons why plastics have become something we use every day. Plastic is really cheap and fast to produce compared to other natural materials. It is lightweighted in comparison to glass, for example, or other containers, and can save energy when shipping. So, for example, when you are shipping a glass, it's more expensive because you have a heavier truck and you use more gas for it. Plastics are also durable and can be manufactured to be extremely rigid, flexible, or heat resistant. If you think about plastic, it's really, you can drop on the floor and you can squeeze the bottle and you can do a lot of things and the plastic still keep the consistency. So it is a really great material. And because of its many different forms, plastic is a unique material with some valuable functions, including here medicine, safety. You can see in your helmet, in your bikes and your cars, and communication, transport. So we are using for, we have a great use for plastic. However, plastic is now used so much that people cannot go one day or even a couple of hours without using something made of plastic. And although there are clearly valuable uses for it, as I showed before, there are also many plastics that are not necessary. You can see here in our pictures that single-use items like plastic bags or cutleries or bottles, they are often used in a such short period of time and then discarded. Because many of them are made from non-recyclable plastics, they cannot be recycled. And so they will end up in landfill and sometimes in our environment. The rise of plastic production has been quite significant over the years. So if you see here in our graph, due to high demand and consumption, since 1950, when we start to sell plastic in a great demand, plastic production has increased exponentially. By 2017, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but in 2017, we had produced approximately 8.3 billion tons of virgin plastic. That's a lot of plastic. But if we think about how much is 8.3 billion tons, it's really difficult to think about it in such a huge number, such a huge scale. But we try to come up with an equivalent, and that would be a weight of 1 billion elephants. Yes, 1 billion elephants. If you put it 1 billion elephants all together, that's how much plastic we are talking about. You may be able to see from the image that production is getting faster and faster by the year. And if the trends continue, by 2050, we will have produced 26 billion metric tons of plastic waste. That's over 3 billion elephants in 2050. So it is a lot of plastic that we are producing, and it's a lot of plastic that we are wasting. Oh. We are simply producing and using way too much plastic to deal with. Our plastic consumption has outpaced waste management. So we are producing more than we can manage. And this means a huge amount of plastic waste is escaping our environment and is reaching the environment. It's escaping our waste management and reaching the environment. And you have probably heard before that we have an estimate that 8 million tons of plastic waste enter our ocean every year. That was before, that was a study before, and now in 2020, Borrell and other researchers, including Chelsea and Hannah from our team, they now estimated that about 23 million metric tons of plastic enter aquatic environmental ecosystems in 2016. That because now they are considering the growth in the plastic production, pollution, not just in ocean, but also in rivers and lakes. So we are talking now in 23 million tons of plastics entering every year. So even with all current efforts to reduce plastic pollution, if we keep producing and using plastic the same way that we are doing, this number could reach up to 90 million tons per year by 2030. And the problem with plastic, with the plastic pollution, is that it takes an extremely long time to break down. And even then, it doesn't disappear completely. Every piece of plastic that has ever been made exists in some form, likely in the small fragments and microplastics, and even it's smaller. Because it never really goes away, plastic persists and accumulates in the environment. We now find it in everywhere. It is really hard not going any location that you go with beach or even a field, or you go to a jungle in a very distant place, there will be a chance you'll find a plastic. And plastic pollution is also more than just an eyesore. It is also threatening the health and survival of our wildlife through entanglement, ingestion, that we already saw so many pictures and so many research talking about that, and the chemicals associated with plastics, both from the additives from production and the pollutants which they absorb from the environment. And I know that is a lot of information, is a lot of problems with plastic, but let's have a little bit of a break here right now just to think about it. One question, if a quick poll question for all of you. So I want to know what you can guess. What percentage of all plastic ever made globally do you think has been recycled? You can type in the chat. I will count until 3 and then you all type at the same time. Do you think it's 55%, 29, 12%, or 9? You can guess. We see a lot of 12%. 19, 29, 2%, 12%, 0.5%, 90%. All right. Let me see. Next one. The next. Does anyone else want to guess? All right. One more 12, 12. All right. I will share the results. All right. Yes. So far, those of you who were pessimists in your answer, yeah, you were correct. Unfortunately, only 90% of all plastic waste ever produced were recycled. 79% has ended up in the landfill or in the environment, and 12% has been incinerated. And if we think about other countries, for example, US, only 5% of the material has been recycled. And much of the waste that ended up in the landfills is avoidable, as approximately 40% of all the plastic produced every year is single-use packaging. Use it just once or a very short period of time and then discarded. And then we are thinking, well, only 90%, so let's forget about recycling. But the reality, no. The truth is that recycling alone will not solve our plastic pollution problem, but definitely helps. Plastic cannot be recycled forever. Every time that we recycle plastic, it's downcycle, but it's different than other material, for example, as aluminum or glass that you can recycle and keep the same properties. Plastic, we cannot do this properly, but every item that is recycled reduce the amount of energy required to make a new one. As we know that plastic is made of oil, every time that we are recycling, we are avoiding more fossil fuel to be used, and we also will reduce gas emissions with the production of plastic. And then, and also, most importantly, when we are recycling, we are also contributing to prevent waste to be sent to landfill. So we are helping our landfills to last longer. And the opposite, when we are sending plastic and materials to waste to the landfill, as we will talk more later, but landfill should be the final option after we refuse. Think about it. If you really needed to buy things, reduce, reuse, then recycle. When we don't have anything else to do with the material, then we should send to the landfill. So by using something only once and throwing the landfill, we are encouraging the continued consumption of fossil fuel and the creation of new products. And landfill, it has this limited space. We cannot dig holes and burrow and put a waste and then build a new, make a new hole and create a new and put in more waste. We have a limited space for that, and eventually it will run out. So we must prioritize alternatives ways to deal with our waste. The waste, and one more thing about landfills, that can also contaminate our groundwaters and contribute to our air pollution when, for example, wastes are decomposing. And not all landfills are perfectly engineered and contained, so often our landfill is not the final endpoint for plastic waste. When waste leaks out from in our environment, it pollutes surrounding environments and other areas as well. And then, okay, it's so many bad news. And what can we do? And I'm very happy that you are all here. If you are here, that means that you really want to do something. And you can, and we all have power to do something about plastic pollution. So thank you for coming here today. And on an individual level, there are three main ways that there are a lot of things that we can do it, but we chose three main points that we can tackle the problem of plastic pollution in our environment. One is reducing consumption, really thinking about using less plastics and not contributing to the need of increasing production. So when next time you're buying, like really look at the product, do I need that? Think about it. If I really need it, can I buy it without the packaging or other or with less plastic? So a lot of small things that we can start to do it will help in the big scale. Another thing is about improving waste management at home and in your local areas. And the third one, and this waste audit is all about waste management, and Chelsea will explain a lot about that later. And then the last one is cleanup. A lot of people say cleanup is not, it is not the solution. Cleanup also helps a lot because we are preventing, when we are cleaning up, we are preventing that waste and plastic will stay in the environment, or it will travel in the environment, will go in watersheds, and it's also a great way to connect with your community. So we always encourage people, participate in a cleanup, organize a cleanup, because it's a fun way to connect with other people who are thinking of the same as you and wants to do something. And then we strongly believe in the power of individual. That's why we are all here today. Even small changes you make on everyday basis can make a huge difference. For example, in Canada, we produce approximately 3.3 million tons of plastic waste per year. 85% of this goes to landfill. Much of this waste is single-use plastics, which can be avoided through smart decisions about the items and that we purchase together and as individual, but as a consumer, and use on a weekly basis. So it is really important we start to think about what we're consuming, but it's also important to think about how we are managing our waste at home. That's why it's so important to know before you throw and learn what items can go in which being accordingly to your local guidelines. We have, I have this experience before, and I'm pretty sure most of you had one moment in life or regular basis that you are not sure if something should go in the recycling or not. You have the item that like, oh, which bin should I put it? In this situation, many people choose to recycle, to throw these items in the recycling bin in the hope that they will be recycled anyway. But in the reality, this can really compromise the waste system and can lead to complications at the recycling center, making it less likely that the stuff that should be recycled will actually be recycled. In Canada, and here in Toronto, I think the rates are the same. Around 25% of the waste put in the recycling bin, it is rendered non-recycled by contamination. So where no recyclable items are mixed in with recyclables. So 20% of the waste that is in the recycling bin, actually goes to the landfill because it was contaminated by the items that shouldn't be there. So next time that you are thinking about waste management, wishing cycling is something that we should try avoid it as much as possible. And with that said, recycling can absolutely be confusing. And I know it is the guidelines, it's so different widely between countries, states, provinces, cities, and even municipalities or districts. If you go, as Chelsea was mentioned, if you go to Etobicoke that is so close to here, your waste management will be different. And this is due to differences in recycling facilities and what they can and cannot process in each location. So some materials recovery facilities are more advanced and are able to process mixed materials, for example, and other areas can only process certain types of plastics. So we would depend the area that you are. In an ideal world, recycling guidelines would be harmonized to make it much easier on us to do the right thing. And actually the government is studying harmonizing the waste system here in Canada. So maybe in the future we will have that, but not now. But this system will only work if everyone involved follow those guidelines. And on that note, this hopefully leads us nicely into the home waste audit. I will hand over back to Chelsea so she can tell you a little bit more about what's gonna be our work, what we'll do, and all the fun that you will have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rafaela. Okay, so Monday begins your personal home waste audit, which you will undertake for a total of 2 weeks. So this audit includes 3 overarching tasks. 1 is webinars like today. 2 is the audit itself, meaning counting and characterizing your waste. So that's the data collection. And then 3 are the online surveys to guide increased waste literacy. So hopefully you've already completed survey 1, and by the end of this webinar, you'll only have 1 webinar left. Otherwise, for this project, all you will need is a piece of paper and a pencil and your computer. So if you don't want to print the data sheets, you can also make your own on a piece of scrap paper, as long as you keep all of the same prompts. And then you can later type your answers into the data sheet that I'll show you later. You will be receiving all of the links to the surveys, the data sheets, and other resources that you need via emails from Eventbrite. We're also going to put some of them in the chat tonight. And if anything is unclear, always reach out. And we promise we will not clutter your inbox more than we need, and we will be careful to only send you what you need to reduce email waste, pun intended. All right, so week 1. So here we go, because this week will start on Monday. So Rafael, if you can advance the slides too, actually. 1 more.
Oh, sorry.
Perfect. So during week 1, it's very important that you continue business as usual. So this week is your baseline week. So this means you will compare your other weeks to this week. So this week you want to do what you would normally do. So in order to properly measure baseline and how our increased knowledge and change behavior reduce our waste, you must not change your behaviors yet. To prepare for your home waste audit, I suggest either printing or preparing your data sheets and having the instructional guide either printed or up on your home screen to follow along for the 2-week period. For me, I decided to log my waste weekly at the end of the week. So that meant I would dump out my garbage on the floor and tally my data on a piece of paper, but you can also choose to collect the data as you throw. So over this 7-day period, you're going to count and characterize the waste you produce in your landfill bin and your recycling bin, and you're going to record the count and category of each item you throw away throughout the week. And I'm going to provide a bit more information on the next few slides. So in this case, what you're looking at are the garbage cans in my house. So some in the washroom, some in our office, and the one under the sink is my main bin in the kitchen. So at the end of each week, what I would do on Sunday is I would collect all of the different waste bins. I'd put them all into the biggest bin. And so if you go to the next slide, once my largest bin had collected all the waste from the week, so you can see now it's full, I would dump it out onto the ground on a tarp or just on my deck. And then I would tally all the litter onto my homemade data sheet, which I made out of scrap paper. But we'll show you what the data sheet will look like. So the data will then go here on this data sheet that you see. And here you can see I've transcribed all the data I wrote down onto an electronic data sheet. So this way it's ready to turn in at the end of the 4-week period. So if you log it weekly, makes your life easier. A couple things I just want to note before I show you the actual data sheet is that on this one that's pre-filled out, under the number of people in the household, you can see here that I have 2 people, and that's pretty important. Actually, I think that's on the wrong line. Apologies for that. We've had a change in data sheet, so I think something got twisted, but basically the number of people is really important. And if you have a pet, I would count them as a half of a person because pets do actually create waste. So it's important for us to be able to know that information to standardize the data. And the other thing is sometimes you have something happen that week that means you use more waste. For example, when I go to Costco, I tend to have more waste in my bin. So you want to note those types of situations as well. So Rafaela is going to unshare her screen. I'm actually going to show you the actual data sheet, which can either be received from the Eventbrite, and I think some of those links are actually being put in the chat. The data sheet looks like this. So you can see that for landfill, week 1 is the first sheet, and then recycling week 1 is the second tab. Then you have landfill week 2, recycling week 2, and then the data summary. So if you go ahead and fill out the sheet, you can start filling out these top notes really at any time. But what you'll see here is you count the tally of items, and these are pretty broad categories. So soft plastic packaging. So we don't really need to know the color of the plastic unless it's black, which is relevant to like waste management. And you'll see that in certain cities that you live in. But we will want to know the material type. Other things that are important is like if you have a piece of paper or cardboard and you rip it apart, it's still counted as one single item. And then for plastic packaging, you'll see we put it in like soft, hard, but we don't necessarily put like it's a Coca-Cola bottle or it's a fruit bar with the brand name. Now, when you tally these up by plastic type, or by material type, plastic, paper, metal, glass, mixed, and other, and we'll do a bit of information later on kind of what falls into these categories. You can kind of see the way we categorize here. And then that will pre-populate automatically this table, and you're going to see your data graphed automatically. So by following these sheets, you'll get to see your data graphed in real time. And at the end of your second week, when you populate your data, you'll actually get to see the comparison. So this is pretty neat. Hannah updated this for us and was able to provide basically a tool for you to get to see your data quickly. And then, of course, we'll synthesize and show you all of the second webinar. So I'm going to stop sharing. Rafaela will put the PowerPoint back up. And we're going to go ahead and do a little quiz. So I just want to go through some of the kind of the hard items to see which category would you put it in. So if in your bin you threw away styrofoam, which category would you put it in? Would you put it in plastic? Would you put it in paper? Would you put it in metal, glass, mixed, or other? Styrofoam. You can type it in the chat. Is it a plastic, a paper, a metal, a glass, a mixed, or an other? Wow, nice. A lot of you are putting plastic. A couple others, this one is confusing. The answer is plastic. Okay, so no more typing so we can kind of start over. I'll just put like an over so we know we started over. And the next one is floss. What is most floss? Is it plastic, paper, metal, glass, mixed, or other? Julia, you are correct. And Linda, it is plastic. Okay, so I'm going to type over and you can stop typing. And the next item is compostable plastic cup. Is it plastic, paper, metal, glass, mixed, or other? Compostable plastic cup. Julia has plastic. Audrey has plastic. Good, you are correct. And I know this sounds silly, like I've called it a compostable plastic cup, but you'd be amazed at how it's marketed, sometimes as not plastic. Okay, next is a cigarette butt. Is a cigarette butt plastic, paper, metal, glass, mixed, or other? Audrey says mixed. Alice says mixed. You are correct. It has plastic in it and it's also paper. So Julia, you're not wrong that it has plastic, but then there's paper around it. So technically it would be mixed. Okay, we'll do one more. And that will be a silver chip package, like a Doritos package. I have one here. I can show you. Oh, maybe I can put it right in front of me. Is it plastic, paper, metal, glass, mixed, or other? And Audrey says mixed. And we've got some plastic. It does have plastic. It also has some aluminum. It is mixed. So it is kind of confusing. And so you can talk to each other, which I'll talk about an opportunity for that in a little bit. You can also Google it and you can also ask us for advice. And if you mess up, it's not the end of the world. Awesome. Okay, so now we'll talk about our recycling waste. So you're actually going to do the exact same thing. So the next slide just shows my recycling bin. In my case, I only have one and I did it at the end of the week. And then we are not measuring organics. So if you have a green bin, just ignore it. If you don't, do not tally your food waste. And if you're going to do what I did and you're going to dump your garbage at the end of the week, I'd keep your food waste separate because it's going to get pretty yucky otherwise. Okay, so now let's take a little bit of time for some self-reflection and hear from each other as you think about your upcoming home waste audit. So you're going to type in the chat again. What do you think, based on your habits, that your most common waste item is going to be? So share in the chat. What do you think is the most common waste item you'll have? Yeah, waste like garbage. I'll share what mine was, which actually surprised me. Mine was junk mail and a lot of junk mail. I also had plastic wrappers from food bars from Costco because I have an addiction. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. All right. And we will see if you are correct. Well, you will see because you'll be anonymized. Okay. So carrying on, let's say now you've finished week one, you've logged your waste, and now you're going to complete survey 2. Survey 2 is designed to increase your waste literacy. And when you're done with this survey, you're done with the surveys. Okay, so week 2 is really no different than week 1, except now you can begin to try to reduce your waste by following the steps in the waste or the solutions hierarchy. So also when you complete week 2, you're going to organize your data sheets, making sure all of your data is typed into the forms, and you're going to send us all of your data in an email that's provided on the screen. Please, please, please send your data to us by February 7th so that we have time to tabulate the data and we can report back at the second webinar. Now, we know that it can be overwhelming to find information online, to learn and think about the ways in which you can reduce your waste. It can feel a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. And we also do recognize that change is hard. And that's why often most progress is made by baby steps. So your second week, you might reduce your waste, but you might think I can do more, and you can always continue on. You can also find a lot of information about how to reduce your waste on the internet. But if you'd rather not surf the web for information, we have tried really hard to provide some tips and tricks on our website. So these tips are also on social media. If you follow us on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, and you'll see these during the waste audit. If you want to share some tips, please feel free. You could share them on social and you can tag us so that our audience sees you. Okay, so you got this. Remember, this is not a competition. We will not be judging you on how much or little waste you produce. We are truly just interested in seeing how an increase in waste literacy and a little bit of effort can make a difference in our waste production over time. And once we have all the data by February 7th, We're going to synthesize it, we'll anonymize it, we'll analyze it, and we'll share all those results with you, as well as discuss lessons learned. So now you get to sit back, relax, and put your feet up until Monday. And so now it's time this is at the end, you get to put your feet up until the second webinar. And it'll be time for us to get to work exploring the data. So we'll try to put it into pretty graphs so you can envision and see it all. And we'll share it with you in our second webinar. And please mark your calendars for that. It is February 22nd at 7 p.m. So a little over a month from now. Okay. So it is about to be time for questions for either myself or Rafaela about anything you just heard. So context about plastic waste or the instructions. But before I turn it over for questions, I just want to quickly introduce somebody who is on the call tonight who did our waste audit before. I don't remember if it was last year or a few years before. Quentin really enjoyed our waste audit and wanted to try to find a way to get involved. And one of the things that I think he noticed while doing our waste audit is that it would be really nice to have a community to engage with during. So Quentin's founded Scarborough Zero Waste, and we're going to give him the floor to kind of talk about an opportunity during our waste audit. So Quentin, you can turn your camera on, turn on your mic, and over to you for a minute or two.
Thank you, Chelsea. Hi, everyone. Good to meet you. Basically, the idea is to meet halfway. So having done the audit in the past, sometimes, you have a momentum and then you have everything, a lot happening in your life. And then it doesn't kill to have a bit of support and motivation. So we just wanted to invite you. Basically, it's like the weekend between the two weeks, and to do the audit together, and share ideas, maybe many questions that might arise. As Rafaela and Chelsea said, the waste management in the city of Toronto and the GTA can be a bit confusing. So it's totally normal to have questions arising. And so basically sharing or hesitation or questions, that's the idea. We'll probably share a tea, make it nice and interesting, and then hopefully, spend a good time together and learn and develop our waste literacy. It's happening on Sunday the 28th, online on Zoom. We can do it from our kitchen with all the waste or where you decide to do the audit. And I think that the UFT Trash team will share the link to the Zoom. We're just asking you to register to know if we need to organize the event. And so the registration link will be sent to you. And exciting to have that meeting with you guys. And thank you for the opportunity to the UFT. I'm a fan, so thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's great timing because at that day you can talk about your first week and you can start to brainstorm ways in which you can reduce your waste. Rafaela, do you want to share your slides again? And we'll go ahead, and that's just going to have the instructions for Q&A. And we will go ahead and allow some time for question and answer. So basically you can either type questions in the chat, and you're also welcome to raise your hand. I'll moderate. If I see a hand raised, I'll invite you to turn on your microphone, turn on your camera if you want, and ask a question. And we'll also watch the chat in case anyone has any questions. Awesome. Alice asks, is this part of formal research that you are doing? How will the data be used? Thank you for asking that question, Alice. So the first year we were doing it as part of formal research. We actually have a paper in peer review right now from the waste audit to basically share the methods and the results with the world. But moving forward, we do this for fun, and the results are shared with everyone on webinar 2, and then often we'll put the results from each year on our website, but it's not part of formal research, and everything is anonymous, so nothing is going to be shared through the peer-reviewed process, and your name won't be known. Thanks for asking. Any other questions?
Hey, Chelsea, this is Susan. I don't have a question, but I was skimming through the chat, and it wasn't a direct question, but it is an interesting discussion point. Audrey had shared about a waste item of food cans, and there was just a little bit of feedback about this, you can recycle them, but you could still consider it waste. And I guess the general question is, what would you define as waste? How do you define what is waste?
Yeah, so this, that's an excellent point, right? Everything is they're a bit gray area here. And so I think you can define waste how you want to, right? I mean, if I think there's some like hardcore zero wasters might try to not have any waste. We've tried to make this a little bit more, I guess, feasible. It's quite hard to go completely zero waste, and we recognize this. And so in this case, what we're suggesting as a good goal is to try to divert waste away from your landfill. And if something fits into a circular economy, that is better than if it goes into the landfill. So we're kind of going by the waste hierarchy here, being that the first step is to reduce the amount that you use. So you're reducing your waste. The next step would be to reuse. And then the next step would be to recycle. And so that's where, when we have the recycle bin here, for us, we see it as a win, even if your waste bin, your landfill bin goes down, and even if your recycle bin goes up. So, but these are your own personal goals. So really, really up to everyone here to make your own personal goals. Yeah. Any other questions? Thoughts? Excitement to begin? Julia, has anything in the past studies struck you or stood out with the data collected? And two, do you do this more than once per year? So formally we do it once per year, but sometimes a business or a school will be interested in our waste audit, and we'll help them. We'll either, do some of it, or we'll help them facilitate their own. I can say what has struck me over the year, and then I'll turn it over to Rafaela to share anything that struck her. But and I'll also share that in the first year we all did this ourselves. So I think what struck me, and this included my own data, was how wrong I was, and most people, on how much waste we produce. We all estimated the amount of waste we produce each week. And then I think it was also really interesting to see some of those really hard, like, what are the items that are really hard to reduce? And some of it is just because of the way that our foods are packaged, making us think about how do we kind of foundationally and fundamentally help people reduce their waste. I'd say that's for me. Rafaela, what do you think?
Yeah, you kind of spoiled the results, but it's true. No, that's okay. That's for me something that really stood for me the most. It stood out for me even in my when I was doing a home waste audit. I underestimate how much I was producing, and that was like very surprising. And since I did the home waste audit the first time, I really now look at my own waste in a different perspective. Every time that I put something that waste bin, I try to, especially recycling, can I try to reduce that? That's something that I always put in my mind when I'm actually going to the recycling bin. So since the first time, I think really I learned that when you look the amount of you're producing, especially when you live in apartment, I was living in apartment. So you put in the shooting and disappear the garbage. So you just have the recycling. And then when you have your own garbage and you kind of need to count it, you realize that how much that I was producing more. So that's, for me personally, is something that I was, after that, I started to have some strategies. What should I do, and how things that I could in our family try to reduce. But yeah, you see, we will be happy to share and learn from you in a couple of weeks what stood out for you and what you learned through the process.
Yeah.
And we have more questions.
Yeah. Question in the chat. It is, so this is not directly related, but so feel free to ignore, but we won't ignore. Here we are focusing on what individuals can do. That's right. Do you have specific links to what industry or manufacturers are doing and can do to reduce plastic links or plastic use? And when you say specific links, maybe you're looking for information, and you can let us know, like follow-up information. But I will say that at the U of T trash team, we believe that everyone can help with this solution. And so the answer is yes. Like we try to think about what individuals can do. We also work with governments, and we also work with industry. So we actually have a couple projects. One is to try to prevent plastic pellet manufacturers from losing their pellets down the drains around the manufacturing site and losing them into, like if it goes down the drain, it goes into our rivers and into our lakes. Rafaela is leading a project trying to help restaurants and coffee shops reduce their single-use foodware, so switching to reusables. So we do a lot of work, which we call them pollution prevention projects, which are really focused on how can we work with other stakeholders to prevent pollution. And Carrie, is maybe a similar question. I understand individual waste is important and essential. How are corporations using plastics taking responsibility? Is there data showing how much plastics are produced by these company packaging compared to individual uses? Well, those are kind of linked, but because the company produces the packaging and then sometimes they sell them to us and then we are the user. But I will say that under some of Canada's new policies, they are using an extended producer responsibility policy, which means that industry pays for the plastic waste that they help produce. And that usually can mean lots of different things. I think in Canada, it will be relevant to them paying for waste management, but also hopefully there's a scheme where they're incentivized when they reduce the amount of waste that they use. I'll also say that I'm calling in today from Windsor, Ontario, at the International Joint Commission, which is the government that works between the US and Canada to protect our waters, well, to do lots of things, but in this case, we're working on the Great Lake Water Quality Agreement, and we are working on a monitoring and risk management framework for microplastics. So today we basically decided on a risk assessment framework to put forward to governments to try to help governments manage microplastics. So there's work happening at every level. Individual level is really important, but these questions are great because these other levels are also very, very important.
Yeah, and one thing that just complement what you're saying, we are really seeing, we are in an exciting times. We are discussing more about plastic. The government is taking now seriously about plastic pollution and how to prevent. So standardized waste management is something that they are working on in the future, and extended producer responsibility is something that we should look and pay attention, and the government is trying to work on that with more products right now, and plastic, especially plastic packaging. So we are seeing progress, and we're seeing new things happening in the past years and in the new years that is coming. So it is an exciting moment, I would say.
And I think we have one more question in the chat that Susan's going to read because I think it's way up there. And then
yeah, it's actually so this question is from a Susan, but a different Susan. Specific to the waste audit, was wondering, do we record the recycling that we do outside of the Blue Box program? Like I take pens to Staples for their recycling program, so some of these other initiatives.
I would say that you do. So if it's household waste, I would say that you do. If it's pens that you produce at work and you take them to the recycling, then I would say that you probably won't. But if it is your household waste, I would say that the answer is yes, but it would count as recycling.
Yeah. And I'll add on, if you'd like, you can make a note on the data sheet. There is a notes section, so you can add something in there to let us know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, then I think it is about time to wrap up. So I'm going to start by thanking everyone for attending our first webinar and for registering to participate in our home waste audit. We hope you continue throughout the entire 2-week period. And if you have questions along the way, we really mean this, please feel free to reach out to us. We love to hear from you through social media, through email, however. If you'd like to share your home waste audit stories, you can do that directly on social media. You can tag us and write down the hashtag home waste audit so that other people doing the audit can see and follow those stories as well. So with that, we will say good night. We will say Happy New Year, and we will really look forward to sharing our stories and our data together And so thank you. Good night. And if anyone has lingering questions, we'll just hang out here for a minute or two in case you do as well. Thank you so much. We'll see you in about a month, and we'll see your data in a couple weeks.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.